Oh, here I am. Am I here? Okay, that went a lot faster than I expected it to. I gotta get these transitions figured out and make them a little bit more smooth. But maybe that's all right. Good morning. Hello. Welcome to ENGL 386, the graphic novel class at UMW. I'm Professor Zach Whalen. You're probably in my class if you're watching this, so hello. If you're not in my class, you're still welcome to watch. As you can see, I've got the stream channel from Discord up above me here, so if you have anything to say during the stream, that would be a good place to put it so that it goes on the stream. You can also use the Twitch chat if you'd like, although that won't be archived, and also you can send me a message through some other means if you have a question that you'd rather not appear on screen, and have it archived. So I think everything is working. If you can't hear me or I sound weird, please let me know, or if there's background music, sometimes I forget to turn that off, but I think I did. Actually, I'll just go ahead and pause my Spotify so that that's not playing anymore, so at least that's eliminated. And then let me just turn this other thing off. So, okay, that should be good. All right, so hope you're all doing well. Hope you had a good weekend and that you remembered to stay socially distant if you were socializing at all, because it's important for us to all keep that up. Today, the plan is to introduce Watchmen, but I have a few other things to talk about and remind you about too, so that won't be the entire time. In fact, my introduction to Watchmen might be kind of short because, well, you'll see. I have just a few slides and then I'm going to talk about a few things. But as you can see here from the schedule, this is today, 9/21, and then we are moving on into Watchmen. And so for Wednesday and Friday, I will be meeting with different groups of you in person, and we will be talking about those pieces of content from Watchmen. Everyone else, I will be giving you a similar set of discussion questions, and you'll be discussing them on your own, either in Discord or possibly Canvas. So that's the basic agenda for what's coming up. Looks like I have 18 viewers. Is anyone out there? If you are watching, it's always nice if you say hi and see, so I can see who's here. I see lots of people online, and so I kind of can guess who's here. But it's always good to hear, a greeting. So there you go. Hey, thanks, Yoshi Player. Good to see you all. Zed, good to see you. Hello, Lamsey. And Krelia, great. It was good seeing many of you face to face, or partial face to partial face in the classroom the last few days. Yeah, let me get in here with an emoji. Oops, I don't want to move that. Great. I'll do a wave emoji. Okay. Hi everyone. Okay, so yeah, it was good to see you all face to face, and also good to see those of you who are remaining online. We're able to continue making progress through things. Obviously, the difference and the conversations that we can have in person are just going to be slightly different conversations than what you may have online. But ultimately, we're all working toward the same goal, and I feel pretty good about how those of you who were online were able to work towards the goals of each of those discussions. But this system is something that does take a bit of work, and will continue to kind of evolve it and make it make it as consistent as possible, given the complications. I just noticed that your words don't appear all the way at the bottom of this window of text. I guess it's fine, but they were showing up all the way at the bottom, but now that I've set it to, maybe it's just because they're disappearing. I've set it so that your messages disappear after a minute, so maybe that's why it appears to be not starting at the bottom, because there's not much above it, if that makes sense. So we'll see if that changes, as you may have more things to add. Yeah, okay, so not sure if I have any other general logistics to cover, but just remember, I will be meeting with a group of you on Wednesday and another group on Friday. I'm not going to keep sending reminders about which group is meeting when. I hope you all know now who you're with. And hi, Kyler. And so I hope that's pretty well settled in your mind as far as when you're supposed to be there and not. But if you have questions, you can ask. Honestly, I'd have to look it up to remember which group is which. So yes, Rose, Tyler, it is due Wednesday, so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about here at the beginning. But yeah, so let me do that now. So let's take a look at the assignment. Groups one more time. Yeah, so Kyler, if you look at your, I can look it up, Kyler. So if you click on your username, you can see which. Hopefully you know which superhero group you're in. So X-Men, Avengers, Defenders, Justice League, Teen Titans. Did I get them all? Hopefully I got them all. And so let's see. I actually don't remember off the top of my head which is which. But if you go, let me see. So I know Teen Titans are the online only group. Let me see. I know I posted, I'm looking at my reminder that I posted recently. Where did I put it? Okay, so Avengers and Defenders are on Fridays, right? Yeah. And so I'm looking back at my notes, making sure. Was Friday the 17th? Yeah, no, Thursday was the 17th, but then Friday was the 18th. So Avengers and Defenders, you are Fridays. Justice League and X-Men, you are Wednesdays. And Teen Titans, you are online all the time. So Kyler, I think you're an X-Men. Yeah, so Kyler, you're an X-Men, so you will be on Wednesdays. X-person, X-Men, X-woman, X-person. You know how it is. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. It's okay to double check, right? So don't feel bad if you need to double check. I'm happy to try to answer your question if I can, but I'm not going to proactively remind you all anymore, just because I'll show up and you'll show up and that'll be great. Or you'll do the online instructions. And just as a general disclaimer, you should always feel free to participate in the online, even if you are assigned to one of the face-to-face versions of the class. I'm not counting attendance in the sense of punishing you for missing a day. I will reach out if you are missing on a day. I will kind of find out what's going on, make sure you're okay. But if for whatever reason you need to participate in the online version, you're always welcome to do that. That's always fine. Okay, so let me say a little bit about the disassembly. I've kind of gone through it a bit before, and I don't mind doing it again, but that's hopefully something that you are working toward. It is due Wednesday, so let me kind of go through the different parts of it to make sure you know what you need to do. So I do want you to use Comic Book Plus to find your comics. In the past, I've made this, I've let people come up with their own, and I think this might work better just to have a more consistent set of things and a set of challenges that you're having to work through, honestly. So I'd like for you to use this if possible. So you can do all kinds of things. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to browse this. Let's take a look at June. Oh wait, what do we do? How do we do this? June 1951. Okay. Let's read Airboy, Volume 8, Number 5. Never heard of this. Oh, Black Magic, that looks good. I've been reading a lot of just horror comics just for fun, and they're all pretty cheesy, but it's kind of fun to read cheesy comics sometimes. So you can, of course, try different ones out until you find one that particularly speaks to you if you want. And let's see, Airboy. That's pretty good art, actually. I mean, for one of these kind of comics. And I guess he has some kind of jet plane. Yeah, nice. Okay, so who are these guys? So expecting me, but how did you know? All right, so this is pretty good. Once you find a page that you like, or even that you don't like, but that you have a problem with, that's another way to approach these. You just need to save a copy, and I'm going to right-click and save image as. You can't see the pop-up, but on Firefox, when you right-click, it says Save Image As, and then it saves it as a JPEG. And that's how what I would recommend. You just need one page of a comic. And actually, I want you to only use one page of a comic. And then copy that into GIMP or Pixlr or Photoshop, and then start messing around with it, basically. Okay, great. Yeah, Rose. If you find one that especially if you have some kind of, I mean, Rose mentions one, Friends of the U.S. Army. If you're interested in military history or military, I don't know if it's propaganda, but if it's propaganda, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if you want to see me mess around in GIMP anymore or Glimpse. But basically, the idea is you copy this image and you play around with it. If you would like, let me know if you would like me to demo anything with that real quick. But I can, otherwise I'm going to show you the other parts of the assignment. I mean, yeah, Kyler, I do want you to use this unless there's some really compelling reason, just because I think the comic strip can be good, but it's a different kind of good, if that makes sense. And I mean, I don't know how much work you've done. I hate to ask you to redo something. I think some Calvin pages would be great, actually, maybe like the full page Spaceman Spiff kind of things. I'm really interested in you experimenting with it at a level that has to account for the arthrology, if you remember from Grunstein. So you're thinking about a particular panel and then ripping it out of that context, so pulling that like bone out of the skeleton, so to speak, and and then messing with it on its own. So you're taking it out of some context and then doing more work to it. So yeah, Rose, it's one panel. And so if you think about like a single panel of a typical 3 or 4 panel comic strip, there's often not that much going on in a single panel of even a Calvin Hobbes kind of comic strip, and so there's not much to take away. The ones I'm looking at here are also pretty minimal, honestly. Oh, that's cool. It's like a big flying wing kind of thing. I like that. But there's a bit more going on here, and so wow, this is kind of cool. I kind of like this. This is you could take the text out, or you can change things. These are actually pretty minimal panels, but these are much more energetic here and much more complicated. Oh yeah, this is a good one. So these give you more to tease out of it, basically. So that's my recommendation. So okay, so hopefully that's clear with everybody. I'm not going to go through this process of messing with it, but then I'd like for you to write a short essay, but really it's just a description of your process. So if you go here in the assignment description, I am looking for you to write a brief essay. It just needs to be long enough, and I say 400 words to give you a ballpark, so essentially a page worth of writing. And you can do this in Google Docs or whatever. I think it's a little easier if you share it, like if you put your text and your image together in a single document. So take your disassembled image and your original image, insert them into your document, and then write about it. That just puts it into one package, essentially. That's easier to turn it in that way. So that's a recommendation or a request, I suppose. This is going to be graded on my minimalist grading scale. So you have, it has to have a disassemblage of some sort. It needs to be written clearly and with correctness as much as possible. You need to try to pay attention to the things that we've been interested in so far in terms of theory. But anything that kind of stands out to you or that you took notice of as you were pulling apart the comic, that's the real thing that indicates success here. The point is to kind of hone your, vision of the comic, to kind of train your eye for what to look for and what to pull apart. And so that's what I'm interested in as you kind of explain your work. And then just, did you do it all correctly? And that's all fine. So let's do Wednesday. If you can before class, that's fine, but anytime Wednesday, honestly, is fine. So we can maybe take a look at a few during class on Wednesday. Probably won't do that a whole lot though, just because some of us will be face to face and we'll have something to talk about from Watchmen. Okay, so hopefully that's good. If you have any questions about any part of this, always feel free to reach out with questions, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. To make sure you're ready to go with these. I wanted to mention a few other assignments that are ongoing as well. We've got nope, that's different class. We've got the hashtag is active. So I hope you're following the hashtag on Instagram. If you use Instagram, just follow the hashtag. And we can see several posts already by the defenders who were in charge of the hashtag last week and the week before. This coming week, it falls to the Justice League. So the Justice League, you're taking over. Feel free to use it. Do whatever you can with it. We've got the defenders chose to use a corporate account where all 4 of them had access to this account, and we're posting on it kind of as a single voice. So I can't tell who posted which. You can do it that way, or you could each use your individual posts, individual accounts, or make individual finstas, or whatever you'd like to do. This is perfectly fine. And as far as like the discussion of it, like the text of it, this is certainly fine too. You always want to remember to create some context so anyone finding this would be able to understand what you're talking about, even if they weren't in the class. So that's just a thing to think about. It is eerie, right? I mean, I agree. It is kind of, and McLeod is doing that on purpose. I thought this was interesting, defenders. I don't know who posted this, but this looks like, I wonder if this is, I don't know what this is. It's interesting. It almost looks like a staging treatment for Fun Home, the musical, like the kind of thing you would write to prepare the set of it, because these are both images. Like this image is sort of like one of the opening images from the book, but the whole idea of juxtaposing the images from the book with Alison Bechdel, the writer, at her desk, that's kind of the main premise of the musical. So I'm wondering if that came from that. I'm just curious about the source of these. So yeah, let me know, I guess. And then talking about the reading, right? Narrative and vacation time. I did not do this on purpose. I appreciate the trademark for my name, but I did not do this on purpose. Actually, I almost always start the semester with this particular comic. It just so happens to be, and tragically, it happens to be appropriate right now in terms of forest fires and destruction. So that was not on purpose, and I even regretted it in a way, and didn't. I was wondering if there was another one that I could substitute in there, but the issue is, I wanted to have that reading that Donald Alt has of this comic, and I wanted you to see that, and so I wanted to put those together. There are certainly plenty of other excellent Karl Barks comics, and I have quite a few, but it's just, this was the one that had the essay about it, so it made the most sense. So yeah, Margs, that could be the case. I don't know, to me it doesn't look like Alison Bechdel's style, but she could of course change her style or write slightly differently, but that's certainly possible. She had some interesting comics about the show, and it's pretty interesting to see how that works. Okay, so I usually do teach that book, by the way. I didn't for you all, and I'll explain why when we get to that part of the semester, but I looked at several books to substitute from what I normally teach, and that was one that I ended up taking out, and it's a great book. I recommend it. It's just I had another book I wanted to read in place of it in terms of the logic of the semester, so it's one of those on the recommended list, I suppose. Yeah, I saw, and I didn't see it on, that's great that you got to see it on Broadway. I saw the UMW production of it, which was amazing, I think. I don't know if any of you were involved in that, but it was very well done. I really enjoyed it, so thank you if you did. And hopefully if you were here last year, hopefully you got to see that. Or was it last year or the year before? I forget how time works. Yeah, I think it was last fall, right? Yeah, I think so. I gave a brief talk to the theater group about Fun Home, along with Gary Richards and Kate Haffey. So anyway, so let's talk about some other things. I guess, if you have any questions about Instagramming, let me know. If you have any questions about blogging, let me know. Avengers, it's your turn to blog. And so I did created accounts for you all in the mayorwatchacomics.net site. I posted a video the other day explaining how to do the blogging. So, hopefully it's clear, but of course, if you have any questions, you should ask. I will say that the Teen Titans have gotten us off to a good start. So if you want to take a look at some good examples of how to do blogging, you've got 4 recently published ones. I commend them to you. You should check these out and try to do similar things. I've noticed that these authors have one of the things you'll need to choose when you start blogging here is what is your name going to be. And I should say you don't have to use your actual name. I've created an account with you with your actual name, but you can change what's called your display name or your nickname. And that you might want to make that the same as your Discord name if it's something other than your actual name, or you could just pick some other screen name. That's totally fine. It's up to you. Just think about kind of creating a voice or a persona around this blog, and whatever name you think makes the most sense. I also encourage you to read each other's blog posts and write comments on them. So when you scroll down here, I believe I've got it set up so anyone can comment, although I might not. But I think it is the case that anyone can comment even if you don't have an account yet. I will be creating accounts for all of you, but even if you don't have an account yet, I believe you should be able to leave a comment on anyone's posts. So please do that. I will also set up a thing so that it will automatically post something in Discord whenever a new post goes live. I thought I already had, but I don't, maybe not. So this way, whenever someone's post goes up on the site, it'll post in Discord, and then everyone can see, hey, there's a new post, and go look at it that way. I would love to do the same thing for Instagram, by the way, but Instagram, just as a platform, makes it very hard to send out that kind of thing. You pretty much have to be in Instagram to see Instagram things. They used to have an RSS feed, they used to have an API, but they took those away, and so now it's very difficult. You basically have to be checking Instagram to see that there's new Instagram posts, which I find very unfortunate, actually. So yeah, that's just what it is, though. Okay, so if you have any questions about all of that, please let me know. But let's take a look at some stuff from Watchmen. I'm going to try and switch my screen around here, if I can do it right. This often kind of takes me a minute. You know what? I'm going to put. So yeah, I'm going to put my screen up here, but I'm going to leave the chat on. I wonder if I can make this slightly transparent. Sorry, I'm messing around with things in here. I can, but I don't, not easily. So I think that's actually going to be fine in that position. And let's see, fade. Yeah, there's that. I mean, I clicked the fade and it says 300 milliseconds, but I wanted to make it a slower transition. I wanted to make that like 1,000 milliseconds or so. Well, anyway, it worked. So here we are. This is me with a slideshow. What is that? Oh, that's my document camera. It's sticking in here a little bit. My plywood and duct tape document camera setup. Okay, so this is let me just slide that out of the way. So just a brief introduction to Watchmen, very brief. Actually, why don't I do this? I will just do this. I'll leave it here. Sorry, I keep messing around with these different things. I didn't have, I was kind of putting this slide together at the last minute, as I often do. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, or let me talk a little bit about Watchmen, what we're talking about here. Watchmen is originally published as a comic book, issues monthly for a year, September 1986 to October 1987. What you see on the left here is the cover of the first issue. And as you can tell from the cover, it's a bit gory. So there's a fair amount of blood and violence in this work. Part of what I want to do when I introduce this book and most books is kind of give you a heads up about content. And that is something you should know, that it is fairly violent. And also I think one of the things we should talk about with the violence is the question of gratuitousness. That question gets to what is the meaning of violence in the context of this book. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but that's sort of the eternal question about Watchmen. Is it gratuitous or is it a critique of gratuity? In other words, is it trying to critique this thing that it's doing, or is it just doing the thing? And I think to some extent both can be true, and that's why it's an interesting text to teach, but it's also an interesting and sometimes tricky text to teach or to talk about. I guess that's one of the warnings. The other one is there is a sexual assault that is a important plot point in this book. So in the sense of its necessity to the book, it is not gratuitous. However, you might say that it's the fact that it was written with that to be necessary might be gratuitous. So there's again, you can, I think both sides of that question have a reasonable point or a set of points to make about, is this just doing the thing or is it critiquing the thing that it's doing? But that's kind of the recurring question of postmodernism, I think. And this is I think a prime example of postmodern aesthetics, and I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. But it was first published as a single volume in 1988, and then it ever since then has really existed as a novel. And as we'll see, even though it was published kind of one chapter at a time, it very much is structured like a novel. It's very much a complete text on its own. So it's not like it ends on it kind of, well, I don't want to spoil it, but it definitely ends conclusively. It ends on an ending, and it develops characters. It has complexity, much like a contemporary novel, and in terms of its length and scope, it is very similar to a modern novel. So the recolored edition, which is the edition you probably have, the date I found for this was 2005, but I thought it was earlier, so I might be wrong, or this might be wrong, but or I might have misunderstood what I read this morning. But the recolored absolute edition is the one you probably have. I have this slightly thicker version right now. I actually got the chroma key is not quite doing that right. This is not the one I have read usually, this particular edition. This particular edition that I have in my hands has some pretty extensive stuff in the back, and also the paper it's printed on is not glossy, which I think is pretty nice. I actually really like this printing of it, this edition. The version I read and that I have all my kind of notes in and sticky notes in and stuff is has glossy paper. It is the recolored edition. I think it's the absolute edition. But it doesn't have the extensive notes, and it's printed slightly differently, and so the thickness is very different. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have both of them here to compare, but this one is a pretty thick book. But I think the thickness is partly because it has the pulpier paper, as opposed to like the magazine style paper. So it is still in print. It's a book that has been continually in print since 1988 in different editions and versions. it was published initially by DC and then under the Vertigo imprint. It's widely recognized as a significant work in the medium of graphic novels, and in fact, if people think about the graphic novel as a serious literary form, it's kind of hard not to think about Watchmen. And even in constructing this class, even though I have problems with the book, there are parts of it I really don't like. I find I am missing something if I don't have Watchmen, or at least spend some time studying Watchmen. So it's an important text in terms of its influence and in terms of its status. In literary studies, we're always careful about ideas of the canon, the literary canon, but it is significant that the other edition I have of this of Watchmen, and maybe the one you have, says, actually maybe it's on this one too, it'll usually say, yeah, they almost always include this quote here, that it's one of Time Magazine's 100 best English language novels since 1923. So it's made the top 100 of novels overall. If you look at it, it's actually like 100 best science fiction novels, I think, something like that. So it's actually like a slightly smaller subset, but it basically, the point is that it's been recognized outside of comics. And so it's not just a thing that people who read comics would read, but a thing that potentially anyone can read. Some of you may have already read it or know people who have. Other classes at UMW teach it, not just comics classes like mine. I will say, just a quick note, if you have read it, there are some pretty significant things that happen in terms of plot that are kind of surprising the first time you read it. So if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. So please, let's avoid spoilers as we discuss it. So whenever you look at the calendar of the schedule, so chapter 1 only on Wednesday, chapters 2, 3, and 4 on Friday, let's keep these separate. Let's keep these on whichever day they're assigned to, and try not to talk about the next chapters if we can, just to kind of keep the spoilers away. Okay, so it was created by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, and oops, why did it say 2005 there? That's not correct. I was typing these quickly. It was written by Alan Moore, and the art and the lettering was done by Dave Gibbons. John Higgins is the colorist, not 2005, and I'm not going to be able to edit this without getting out of this here. I can't get out of it. I can't get out of the slideshow to edit it, but it's not 2005, it's Higgins. So John Higgins did the coloring, and he also did the recoloring. So this means, when people talk about Watchmen, they usually talk about it as Moore and Gibbons being the creators, and Higgins is of course in there. His role is significant, and especially if you compare the original versus the recoloring, you can really see some interesting interpretive things he's doing, or ways he's emphasizing different aspects of a scene. So we'll look at that eventually, but in terms of the standard division of labor for comics, you often will have a writer, you will often have someone doing the penciling, someone else doing the inking, and someone else doing the lettering, and then someone else doing the coloring. So there's usually those 5 roles, and often someone will do more than one of those roles. In this case, we've got Dave Gibbons doing the penciling, inking, and lettering, and so that's pretty significant. Especially because a big aspect of what we'll look at here with Watchmen has to do with style, and what we'll see is a pastiche of style. So a way in which this is drawn in the 1980s, but the color palette, the character designs, even the panel layout, especially the panel layout, is meant to echo a lot of the comic styles that you're seeing on Comic Book Plus, so like Golden Age comics. And so that's a significant part of what's going on here. So this is just a weird picture of Alan Moore. Alan Moore is it's hard to find a picture of Alan Moore that's not a weird picture of Alan Moore. So Alan Moore is the writer of this book, and many others. These are just a few pretty well-known ones: V for Vendetta, Promethea, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. V for Vendetta is a standalone novel, of course, adapted into a movie, and you had the Guy Fawkes mask kind of becomes an icon from that movie, and then people have adopted that mask in the anonymous hacking group and so on. Pretty popular, like, cultural touchstone. Quite a few other works. These are just the ones off the top of my head, and ones you may have heard of. He is an unusual and secretive kind of individual, and has also disavowed anything related to Watchmen So if you're familiar, there have been several spin-offs now and prequels to Watchmen. Alan Moore has done everything he can to avoid attaching his name to any of those. In fact, I'm pretty sure I watched 2 episodes of the Hulu series. I'm pretty sure it just said Watchmen created by Dave Gibbons. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. I remember Dave Gibbons being credited at some point in there, but specifically not Alan Moore. And that was deliberate. Like, that was Alan Moore's request. And he has his own reasons for that, but I think I kind of see his point in that I think Watchmen is a complete work that does what it does on its own. And I at the end of it, I don't necessarily need any more characterization or need a prequel to understand these characters more. Those might be fine text on their own. I've read a few and they were okay, but kind of just okay. They didn't really blow me away. So I think, but the Hulu series I thought was really interesting. So I plan to continue watching that. But there's a movie. Zack Snyder produced the feature film, and that was okay. So again, I think the book is itself doesn't need any of that other stuff, and so that's kind of where I agree with Alan Moore. Okay, so just a few characters. When I was putting the slideshow together, I wanted to try to have pictures of these characters to help you remember them, but I ran out of time. So these are just a few of the characters' names, and we'll get to know and we'll get to see most of these in Chapter 1. Rorschach and Night Owl are the first 2 characters we're going to meet. The Silk Spectre, Sally Jupiter, and then her daughter Laurie. We'll mostly be spending time with Laurie, but I just put them there because they are a pair. Dr. Manhattan is the blue guy, and Ozymandias is the businessman type character. I guess I wish I had more of an introduction to these characters here for you, but you'll see them pretty clearly, and they are, I think, very individually they are detailed and rich characters that you'll get to know, and it shouldn't be too confusing. I mean, the plot does get kind of convoluted in Watchmen, but I think it's, in terms of the characters, it's not too bad as far as what to follow. Okay, so some themes. I think nostalgia is a big theme. I think the idea of looking back at the past is a big theme, so pay attention for that kind of thing. In that sense, I think postmodernism is a big theme as well. And so what we mean by postmodernism here is that it's critiquing the past and the way that the past led to the present. It's taking established aesthetic norms and subverting them or replacing them with something else. There is some politics in here in the sense that several different characters represent different political points of view or ideologies and act on them in different ways in this book, and those actions put them in conflict with each other. And so I think in terms of political ideology, there are some things here that we should pay attention to. One of those political ideologies is nihilistic, and so I think that might be the strongest voice of these throughout this, and again, that goes with the postmodernism theme, this idea that nothing actually matters, nothing means anything. So in that sense, it's a very pessimistic theme, and you will see that throughout. It is a book that I think ultimately is pessimistic or cynical even. So that's something to keep an eye out for. As part of that nihilism, I think misogyny is something also to look for. And this is one of the things, like I mentioned with the violence question, is this book critiquing misogyny in comics, or is it simply doing it? And I think you could see an argument for one or the other, or you could see that it's something of both. Where's my son? Okay, I thought he had spray paint. I think it's like spray on glue. I hope he's not out there with spray paint. Okay, so keep an eye out for these things, and feel free to discuss and debate these things. I mean, these are things we can agree and disagree on. Specifically, I think I don't want to predispose anyone's point of view on any characters here. I want you to read these and take them as you can. But Rorschach is a character that tends to be somewhat polarizing. Sometimes people admire his tenacity, and some people are disgusted by his ideology. So I think that's a character we should be critical of in many ways. So we may find ourselves disagreeing about Rorschach. I guess I'll say it that way. And I assume you know this and take this for granted, but please, if there are disagreements, either face-to-face or in Discord, please keep them civil and use evidence to support your point. And ultimately understand that the people you may be disagreeing with also are doing their best to be civil and present a reasoned argument in their disagreements, and that's okay. That's the best thing we can hope for here. Okay, so we also Laurie's the other character who we may find ourselves disagreeing about, I think. Again, trying not to set you up for too much without spoiling it, so hopefully that's all right. Yeah, finally, so I guess this is my last slide. Again, I was hoping to have slides for these, but I mean images. Pastiche is the idea of taking something and then doing it again. So pastiche is like parody without humor. So like if you parody something, you take it and make fun of it. Like you do like a bad version of it to make the original look ridiculous. Pastiche does the same thing but without humor. It's a kind of appropriation. And so that's the style that Dave Gibbons is drawing in here. Dave Gibbons doesn't always draw this way, and John Higgins doesn't always use these colors. These aren't just natural consequences of who's creating this work. These are deliberate choices, and they have an impact on the meaning of this work. And one of the things this book wants us to know about and wants us to know more about is Golden Age comics. So in a lot of ways, if we want to view this work as a satire even, that's partly what it's satirizing, is that Golden Age vigilante style comics that you might see some of on comicbookplus.com. Complexity is another stylistic choice here. Alan Moore can create incredibly complex works, and that's what's happening here. I mean, this is a complex work, but complexity also becomes a part of how we experience it. As readers, part of our job is to disentangle that complexity, not just to read it, I mean, just to make our way through it, because we have to make our way through it, but to start appreciating it as a work of comic art and literary art. And so in that sense, I think it does have a lot in common with a contemporary literary novel, in that there are layers upon layers, and you can keep looking at it and notice new things each time you look at it. I've been teaching this book for years, and every time I read it with a class, I feel like I discover something I hadn't noticed before. So it's that kind of book. It's almost like a puzzle, and unpacking and solving the puzzle of Watchmen is part of the fun of reading it, but it's also part of the challenge of it, and it's also part of the text's choice here to be complex. So yeah, this is a quick intro, and again, I wish I had images on these slides, but I ran out of time, so I apologize for that. Let me switch back to my main scene here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just a bit of it. So that's my mouse hand. That's not what I wanted to show you. This is my hairy arm. But this is the book Watchmen, and you can see right away the cover. The cover of the collected volume, and there's slight variations on it, but the cover almost always has this image on it, which is a drop of red liquid cutting across the eye of a smiley face. And you can see the smiley face in many pages on this book. So that's one of the motifs to keep an eye out for. It's almost like Where's Waldo? Like you keep looking for this motif of the smiley face and the drop of blood or something else on it. Sometimes it's not blood, actually. So, but oftentimes it is. So let me just kind of take my way through it. Another motif that you'll see over and over again is the clock. So the Doomsday Clock is the theme there. The Doomsday Clock is an actual thing, and I don't know what it's currently set to right now, but it's a group of, I guess, scientists and philosophers. I actually don't know who controls the Doomsday Clock, but it's a continuous I guess, idea of how close the world is to Armageddon or apocalypse, or a nuclear apocalypse specifically. Yeah, somebody, if you're online, like, see if you can find what the current Doomsday Clock is set to, and see if we can, let's see how we're doing. Certainly feels like a pretty apocalyptic year. So this is the first page, and I'm not going to go through and read it, but just wanted to show you the kinds of things you can start noticing about it as you start reading. So this is, by the way, the cover. So this, over here on the left, that would be the cover of issue 1. 100 seconds, said? Oh my gosh. Okay. That doesn't seem like much. Although I guess it's all relative, but that seems a little extra ominous. Oh, anyway, so this is an ominous book here. Just to give you a little bit of just context here and explaining. Let me kind of see. Do I have something I can point with besides my finger? I'll just use my finger, I guess. Okay, so this is the first page. I can't actually zoom in with this dot cam. This is just a very, like, it's a webcam strapped to 2 pieces of plywood and pointed at the table. So it works, but it's not great. But you see here that this. So watch what happens here. The cover actually starts a sequence of movement here between these. So if you think of this like a camera, this is zoomed in on this smiley face. Right, so we can even start here, right? So we start on the close up on the eye, and then we pan out a bit, and we can see the rest of the face, or not the entire face, but most of it. And then this kind of river of red liquid, which we pan up here, and we start to see a bit more about where this image is. And what we eventually learn is that this is the comedian's, I guess, totem, like his button, smiley face. And we hear, the first voice we hear here is Rorschach, and this is Rorschach's journal. Notice the lettering. The lettering changes between Rorschach's journal, not just the fact that it's in these kind of jagged, torn paper-looking shapes, but the actual shape of the letters looks slightly different from the spoken words down here from this detective. One of the things you'll notice as you start, one of the things I want you to start noticing is the interplay between different scenes and different characters, often kind of across the panel layout. This opening narration has a very like film noir kind of grotesqueness to it. So October 12th, 1985, dog carcass in alley this morning, tired tread on burst stomach. This city is afraid of me. I have seen its true face. So this is how Rorschach talks. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But down here, look at this transition. He says, and all of a sudden, nobody can think of anything to say. And then this guy says, that's quite a drop. And so this like really kind of dorky, cheesy, like detective line as he's looking down. Of course, it is quite a drop. And the idea of being on the brink here, this is something that Rorschach is talking about. The whole world stands on the brink, staring down into bloody hell, all those liberals and intellectuals and smooth talkers. So this is an individual who is also standing on, he's literally standing on a brink and looking down and can't think of anything to say except this, that's quite a drop. So I'm not going to go through the whole chapter, that's up to you, but definitely read chapter 1 so that you can discuss it on Wednesday. And when I discuss things, I will almost every discussion I'll start with like, what did you notice? What questions did you have? So if there's something here that you thought really stood out as interesting, make sure you take a note of it. Or if something comes across as like super confusing, make a note of that as well. And if I know the answer, I will try to answer it without spoiling something that may come later. Sometimes you'll see something here that doesn't make sense yet, but it will later. And so I will try to avoid, revealing things. The plot is complex, but it's worth enjoying that complexity. And this, by the way, this bottom left panel is to me my favorite panel. Just sort of take out of context of in Watchmen, and that's why I use it on the Instagram assignment page, because I just think it is amusing. It's just, let me see if I can hold it up without the focus will actually work on it. Yeah, it's just Dan looking through the window here, looking through the door to his kitchen, and he just sees the text "slop slop," which I love the sound words of that, because that's exactly what it sounds like to do what Rorschach is doing there. Which is eating cold beans from the can. That's what that sounds like. Okay, so just about out of time, maybe a couple minutes left, but I don't have too much else to say about Watchmen. I'm kind of curious if anyone's read it before. I did a quick poll in class on Friday, and I think one of you had kind of read it, but I'm curious if anyone else has read it, and if you have anything that you think everyone else should know before we start it. Then let me know. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about in terms of logistics. I'll move that into the shot fully. Actually, I'll pose a question here. So, have you read this already? And then, so I'll do this, and what I'll do is wow, there's no yes, no emojis. I thought there would be yes, no. So I was going to make it like a quick, poll basically. So I've got Y and N. So respond, just click the right emoji. I mean, you can type something if you want. But if you just click the Y or the N emoji, that'll add up to it. It doesn't show up on this little stream thing here for some reason. I guess they haven't set it up that way. Looks like the N's are winning. So right now it's mostly N's. Or I guess all N's because the first one was me. So this is good. I think it's good to kind of have a group that's working your way through it the first time. I mean, feel free to read ahead, but just don't spoil anything that you discover. Like as you discover things later that impacts what's going on earlier, then don't spoil those things. Do you have any questions about it or concerns about it? I guess that's another thing worth asking. Like if you have not read it, but you've heard about it, you might have heard good things or bad things. So I'm just curious, do you have any concerns about starting it or reading it? I gotta say, yeah, good. I mean, a lot of people who like this book try to pass it on to other people. I gotta say, I like to be fairly transparent in my choices for text. I want you all to understand why I've chosen each book here. And I think hopefully I've explained, I guess, the value of this book for a graphic novel class. I ultimately decided that I thought that value was important enough to teach it even in the context of a year that feels really apocalyptic. And so I know a lot of people who teach this kind of class are really avoiding dystopia and other kinds of apocalyptic writing just because that's kind of where all our heads are already. And so the point of literature, I think, is to take you somewhere else. And this parts of this book, in terms of the bleakness, will unfortunately feel pretty familiar. But hopefully we can get through it anyway. Hopefully that's not too bad. I do think it's a worthwhile book to read. So, yeah. All right, well, I'll be wrapping it up soon. So if you do have any final comments or questions that you want me to talk about on the stream or soon, then let me know. If you're watching this later, of course, feel free to email me or message me in other ways if you have questions or comments. I see Margs is typing, so I'll let Margs get her thought in. But remember, I will be seeing many of you on Wednesday, and for everyone else that will not be there on Wednesday, I will send you some discussion questions or activity kind of things to do on your own online. I think just kind of looking back on how things went, I think having like the Donald Duck comic exercise to do, I think that was good. I mean, I think what you all made was great. I loved seeing all the different approaches you took to that. So hopefully you experienced that, and the experience of it helped you understand kind of the complexity of what Carl Barks is doing, or the way that he makes something really complicated look really simple. And I think that's the real challenge of that work, of that exercise. So yeah, thanks for watching. And so I will try to do something similar if I can, something that's really kind of interactive or has a kind of a goal-oriented activity, something like that. But thank you all who did those. I really appreciate you all seeing those. I appreciate you all putting those together and sharing them in Discord. That was fun to see. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, as Marx is pointing out, like at the time, it was a big deal, and that's certainly important. And the whole idea of like it's superheroes, but it's dark now, and they're bad. That's been done lots of times since Watchmen, but this is the first noteworthy example. Except if you look, I mean, a lot of the Silver Age stuff got kind of dark and realistic, but this is when people talk about ages of comics, like Golden Age, Silver Age, Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns are often said to usher in the postmodern age or the dark age of comics, and definitely that's the case. I remember explaining the plot of Watchmen to my father-in-law, and he was like, "Oh, it's like The Incredibles." And I was like, well, no, but the basic idea that it's superheroes, but having kind of realistic consequences for their being superheroes, that is certainly similar to The Incredibles, I guess. Or, as I don't know if you knew, are watching, but someone has blogged about The Boys, the series on Amazon. I watched a few episodes. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it definitely is a different kind of energy than Watchmen, but similar themes in the sense that the people who you want to be the good guys or that are publicly the good guys turn out to be not so great. But certainly Watchmen did it before The Boys. The Boys was definitely indebted to Watchmen. So, and I mean, The Boys is a comic, by the way. It's not just the TV series. The TV series is based on a comic. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up the stream, but I see a few people still typing, so I will stay online in the chat for a bit. But thanks for watching, and I will see some of you on Wednesday, and some of you on Friday, and all of you online. Okay, hope you have a good day. I'll see you later. Bye.